What's up, Joe fans and Third Wave Sabotage community? Tim here, and we have another review for you today. We're looking at the 1986 Dial Tone. 1986, a great year for G.I. Joe, in my opinion. As I've shared before, I think 1985 is probably my favorite year, but 86 is another great year, I would have to say. Dial Tone is a communications specialist, and he is listed actually on his file card. It just says communications. So he seems to be taking over for our friend Breaker, who was the communications specialist earlier on in G.I. Joe. And I personally have had a great appreciation for Dial Tone because I used to play, Army in the Woods with my friend Brett growing up. And Brett was often the communications or tech guy. And so when Dial Tone came out, I was like, this dude is basically Brett. So shout out to you, Brett, if you're listening. Many great memories of us playing G.I. Joe and playing Army in the Woods and stuff like that. So Dial Tone is the communications specialist. He comes with this massive backpack with the microphone. He's got a cool gun. He's got a cool beret. I really like his uniform setup. It's like military, but also has kind of a, I don't know, just a more laid back look than maybe some other Joes that look straight up military. Fun fact about this Dial Tone is that he is from my original G.I. Joes. So this is not a more recent purchase. I had him and I had all his gear still from back in 1986. So that's pretty cool that I was able to locate him with all his accessories as well. You can see I've got this kind of computerized futuristic backdrop. I've used this for other videos, but it does definitely seem to fit Dial Tone for who he is. I've got an interesting note to share from the Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe, the 3rd edition. The author Mark Bellomo notes that there was a handwritten note from Larry Hama written to Hasbro, and it said, in regards to Dial Tone's codename, if you go with Hotline instead of Dial Tone, change Hotspot to Sci-Fi on the Laser Trooper. So apparently he had a couple different names that were possibly going to be used. Another one was Squelched in addition to Hotline. So the idea behind Dial Tone is that from a young age, he was building all kinds of communications gear and electronics gear. And so he transferred that over to G.I. Joe. He basically got into G.I. Joe as sort of a next step in his career or development, but then found out that it was basically a good end in and of itself. All right, let's talk through the different elements of Dial Tone's uniform. So you can see he's got these bright green, well, maybe not bright, but definitely standout green boots and knee pads, and that will actually match his vest, his sweater vest that he's wearing around his torso. I actually like the color pop. I like that it's a contrast with that black. I think that looks pretty cool. Nothing huge to say about the boots. He does have, you can see on this side, a knife on his left boot. And over here on the right side, he's got some sort of probably technical or communications device. Doesn't really tell us what it is, but he's got quite a bit of that. Even as we go up to his torso area, you can see he's got something over here on this side, something on that side, so both right and left. He does have a brown belt that you can see, and it's got some silver in the middle there. And then on the back, you can just see the belt goes around. Not a lot of accessories on the back for him. Moving up to his body, let's take a look at that torso. All right, so on his torso, you can see he's got kind of this cross strap thing going on, and I'll show you on his back in a minute that you can see his, basically the straps that would hold his, quote unquote, hold his backpack on. I've shared before having somebody like Bazooka where he doesn't have straps and the backpack just plugs into the hole in his back with a peg. That doesn't bother me, but this does line up so it looks like he's got straps on his back to hold on the backpack. One thing I will note is that to have like a crossbody bag, even multiple points of articulation, so you've got basically this part that goes across and then this part that comes down, and then holding a really heavy backpack, probably not realistic. But again, for me, no big deal. He does have a grenade there on his chest, and then that's like a fragmentation grenade, as well as looks like a smoke grenade. Then he's got some pouches on that strap that comes down the side. I think his arms are actually pretty noteworthy. So you can see he's got gloves on, and when you first look, you might think these are like gloves with a cutout there, but this is supposed to be his shirt, and so I assume that that's like just a matching part of the glove that matches the shirt. But cool gloves. He's got those silver wristbands, which, I'm assuming there's some sort of communication device in there. On his right arm, we have some sort of silverish, again, some sort of technological goodie. And then over here, we've got a crest. It does look like it has a horse on it, so maybe it has something to do with infantry. We'll talk about his file card in more details and his specialties in a few moments. And then when we go up to his head, we'll see he also has a silver kind of crest or logo there on the beret as well. All right, looking at his beret here, like I said, he's got that silver crest. Don't know exactly what it is, but a cool little additional feature on the beret. I will say that when you compare this beret to how Flint wears his beret, this is way better. I feel like once they got to Dial-Tone and then moved forward to somebody like Falcon, it just looked a lot better. Even Stalkers, I feel like it was better than Flint's, but not as good as how they molded the head on Dial-Tone and also on Falcon as well. He does have a mustache there, and I guess just a little bit noteworthy is that the beret drops down to that same side that he has the microphone coming from his backpack. So looking at his weapon here, it's called a 9mm Parabellum submachine gun. And a couple things to note. So a submachine gun and something that's 9mm in a military engagement is not going to be nearly as effective as something like, your standard 223 round or your 7.62 that like an AK-47 has. It is a very cool looking weapon. It's got a feel of like a G3 in some ways. And the magazine is actually pretty big, so I was surprised to see that they were calling this a 9mm despite the size of the magazine. I do think it's a cool looking gun overall. It's got those vents all over the barrel. It's got a collapsible stock as well, and like I said, that big magazine. So I do think it's cool. Sometimes I think they're just throwing ideas out for weapons. I do want to note though that Larry Hama did serve, and thank you, Larry, for your service. So he's got some idea about weapons. I've talked about this in probably my Instagram page the most, but when the SAW Viper was called the semi-automatic weapon Viper, SAW, instead of squad automatic weapon, yeah, I was like, some people need to just double check their facts on firearms, especially because the SAW Viper has this massive gun in pretty much all his figures, but that's a side note. Anyhow, so let me say it again, the 9mm Parabellum submachine gun. Okay, hold on, there's more. Pistol, and then it says with silencer. So again, I'm always trying to be really gracious with G.I. Joe because they're the future, right? They're futuristic soldiers, even back in the 80s. So I wouldn't call this a pistol really, but maybe you're familiar with the arm braces and things that different people use these days. So maybe you could classify as a pistol. And then silencer, maybe that front section that has the vents is silencing the weapon. Usually you have your quote-unquote silencer out on the front of the weapon, but still cool looking gun whatever way you look at it. All right, looking at his backpack now, this is called the Anti-Scrambler Communications Backpack with Microphone. We'll turn to the side and look at the microphone in a minute, but I've always loved this, and particularly on the new classified version, which I don't have yet. He's on order from Hasbro Pulse. There's like a drop-down like computer pad built into this, or computer keyboard, I should say, built into the backpack on the classified. It just says like communications expert, that he can do a lot of different things with this. This is not just like a powerful radio, but he can communicate. He can probably, communicate with different people in different areas around the world. Maybe he can communicate with drones and satellites. It's definitely a geeked out backpack, as you can see. And there's a look at the microphone. One of my favorite things about the microphone is it actually lines up with his mouth. Now you can push it up and push it down. You can push it totally out of the way. But sometimes you get a microphone and it's like it takes all the work in the world to get it to actually line up so they could talk into it. So I do like the fact that this is actually lined up with his mouth and he can communicate with it. Here we have a look at Dial-Tone next to Breaker, the original Communications Pro from G.I. Joe. I think Dial-Tone is just a really cool trooper. I don't feel like he's gone way over the top with his gear and his outfit, but it is a whole nother level from Breaker. Breaker is a fan favorite, but for me, I would choose Dial-Tone over Breaker. I just think he looks cooler overall, and I like his accessories more. And bringing in the Cobra Televiper, the communications specialist for Cobra. Yeah, just want to show you that, there were guys who were in charge of communications across the board. I would say the main thing that's going to stand out between Dial-Tone and the Televiper is, first of all, you've got a troop builder with the Televiper versus an individual soldier as for Dial-Tone. And then beyond that, the weapon. I mean, whether a 9mm doesn't have enough punch for a wartime situation, which is not necessarily true, just not as much as a 223 or a 7.62 round. But the Televiper's got that weapon, which is definitely very futuristic, and some people would say it's like a camera. Some people would say it like shoots microwaves or something like that could mess up, the communications of another force or something like that. But needless to say, I think if those two were in a battle, I'm going with Dial-Tone because he's got some more firepower. I do like the Televiper. I think he's a cool figure. But even between these three, as much as I do like the purple and blue of the Televiper, I would still pick Dial-Tone. Let's take a look at the file card here. Codename Dial-Tone Communications. File name Jack S. Morelli, which what I understand from, again, this guidebook from Mark Bellomo is that that's a tip of the hat to a well-known comic artist, Jack Morelli. So primary military specialty, radio telecommunications, secondary military specialty, infantry. Birthplace is Eugene, Oregon. Dial-A-Tone built his own crystal set when he was 10. By 14, he was part of a CB net and had his own ham station by the time he was 16. Dial-A-Tone made all his own equipment, buying parts with quarters earned bagging groceries. I love that, quarters earned. That's like way back in the day. I remember spending a whole day helping my grandmother one time, and she gave me 3 quarters. And I was like, that's really sweet for her, but I cannot buy even a third of a G.I. Joe with this. But anyhow, so back in the day, he saw the Army as a means to furthering his education in his chosen field and quickly found that instead of a stepping stone, it was a goal in itself. Manning a radio in the field wasn't just passing time, it was a job with a purpose. Then it says, one of the scariest things that can happen to you out in the field is to lose contact with your base. That means you are alone. No artillery support, no airstrikes, no medevac, no extraction, no nothing. The cavalry ain't coming until the man with the radio tells them to. So love that. Love the fact that they are accentuating the idea that with Dial-A-Tone on your team, you can get back in touch with headquarters and call for support. You can shift the mission around. You can move things in a different direction when you can communicate with headquarters. Without him, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So I'll roll in some photos here of the classified version of Dial-A-Tone that came out recently. Again, I don't have mine yet, but he looks great. And the response to his character overall, I would say, is quite good. I don't think for many people I've heard that he's like the greatest figure they've ever seen, but a lot of people like him and they're like, we had to have Dial-A-Tone, just like we need to have a wetsuit and a sci-fi, and they're waiting on a Footloose, but Footloose is out now. I think he's one of those classic characters who just had a lot of play, particularly in the cartoon. And yeah, so cool looking figure for classified. I love the OG one here from the 80s. And let's hear your thoughts. What do you think about Dial-A-Tone? Where did he figure into your headcanon and into your play when you were a kid? More videos from Third Wave Sabotage are available right here on the screen. Please like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. Yo, Joe.